Overseas, where former President Jacob Zuma labelling the newly formed Government of National Unity as meaningless. He made the comments at a briefing in Sandton. The former president also describing the deal between the ANC, the DA, the IFP and the Patriotic Alliance as misleading.
When this time they were faced with a problem of how do you deal with the situation in South Africa, they decide to put our country as if it's at war. We now need to be together so that we can have a government of national unity. That is meaningless, says nothing. It's nothing, we're just misleading one another to think that is a good thing. Other people even forgot, thought that they could in fact be together with the DA, because they just put this word, Government of National Unity, others are hiding behind. Now it has become such a thing. By the abbreviation, GNU. Nonsense.
Meanwhile, the MK spokesperson, Ntlamula Ndlela, speaking on Zuma's behalf, announcing they will now take up their seats in the National Assembly after receiving legal advice. MK snubbed the first sitting on Friday after losing a court bid to halt proceedings.
We wish to announce that after taking legal advice, Mkhonto Wesizwe will soon occupy its seat in the National Assembly. We shall continue to raise the issue of the rigged elections even inside the House, while at the same time we shall intensify the court actions and other constitutional methods outside. The protest will continue in other forms. There are many battles ahead, including a total overhaul of the currently biased voting system itself and the biased IEC. Together with the Progressive Caucus and the people, we must fight the sellout deal of the DA and their puppet Ramaphosa by any means necessary and within the law. There is no time to rest.
Well, meanwhile, Zuma again yesterday claiming that the elections had been rigged and again refusing to provide evidence for this claim. He also said that his members of parliament, as you saw, would now attend sittings of the National Assembly. Zuma says his party will work with other parties that are part of what's described as a new grouping. It's currently called the Progressive Caucus. Sanusha Naidu is a political analyst at the Institute for Global Dialogue. Sanusha, good afternoon to you and thanks very much indeed for your time. So again, we have former President Zuma making claims about the election, MK making claims about the election, even claiming to be preparing to go to international courts to argue there. But again, no evidence is being produced. I mean, why does MK keep saying it has evidence if it doesn't produce it?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Good afternoon to your viewers. I think that is something that the MK needs to answer. It's very difficult to kind of understand or to find some kind of articulation of this evidence. I think in the application that they've made now to the Electoral Court in terms of what they see as serious irregularities with regard to the 9 million so votes that they feel have been lost or not counted or haven't been part of the whole context of the IEC's election counting of the votes. I think the problem here is we hear about this evidence. We would possibly like to see that evidence. And of course, at some point, I think in terms of how this goes forward in terms of the application that they've now made to the Electoral Court, it will be very interesting to see if that evidence gets produced in terms of what kind of impact does that those irregularities that they claim have had undermined the outcome of this election. How would that have a material impact on the outcome of the election?
It seems curious to me that MK's MPs would attend the provincial legislature sittings last week. They attended the National Council of Provinces sitting on Saturday, but they didn't attend the National Assembly on Friday. Do you think anything was gained by that? I mean, it seems quite a strange decision. It certainly seems inconsistent from what I can see at this stage.
Well, I think on the basis of the provincial legislature as well as the NCOP, I think that is two very important spaces that link with each other. So once you have constituted the government in the province, then the province has 6 members that go from the provincial legislature to the NCOP, and then there are 4 special delegates. So that makes up 9 delegates per province, which equals 90. So you have to have these legislatures at the provincial level constituted. And I suspect, and this is something I think, again, the MK party spokesperson and the executive can possibly shed more light on in that kind of space, is to be able to say, we felt that it was very important for us to be there. I don't know what the process is if they didn't attend. But those legislatures had to be constituted in the context of what I understand as law, but I could be wrong. And then, of course, with the fact that they did not be present for the swearing in of their 58 members to the National Assembly. Again, I think that they had that the process in itself tells you that there was a sense of quorum that was held. You did have the election of the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and the President. And of course, they can be sworn in now. So they've kind of probably are coming back, and they're going to get, according to the Secretary of Parliament, Kolila George, that they don't necessarily forfeit that process. They can be there, they can get sworn in at any time. So I think they've made that decision based on how they've actually understood the impact that this would have for them.
Zuma says that he'll now work with members of a progressive caucus. So our politics is realigning, and is kind of realigning quite fundamentally in some ways. We have the ANC and the DA and the Patriotic Alliance and the IFP working together in national government, and I think many people thought that would never happen. We now have MK in the sort of opposition benches, the Progressive Caucus. We'll have MK working with, for example, the EFF, which is the other biggest party in that caucus. That includes Julius Malema. I mean, if you look at the history of Zuma and Malema and their relationship, do you think they'll be able to work together? Will it not be a little bit tough? There have been moments of difficulty in their past?
Well, politics is a very, very strange game, and it always is in a constant state of moving parts. So, we can never say what is going to be static or what is going to be fluid, and that's what politics is all about. But I think what's important for us to also bear in mind is looking at the 58 members of the MK party that will be represented in Parliament, who will be leading that party in Parliament. There will be the leader, who will be the chief whip, and according to what we know now is, at the moment, for now, former President Jacob Zuma is not going to be in Parliament. So that will be interesting as well, because we'll have to watch that space in terms of how they go about in creating their structures within Parliament based on the parliamentary process. And that's going to be fundamental as well, because once they get there, they'll have to start thinking about their strategy and how those strategies will formulate in terms of how they articulate what kind of portfolios they want to go into, where they may want to have a bigger presence, or they may want to be the chairperson of a portfolio. How would that align with working with the EFF? I think it's interesting times, because I think both sides of the divide, looking at what we are seeing in the context and design of the GNU, but also in the context and design of the Progressive Caucus, you've got some very interesting dynamics emerging. And you talk about that realignment, but I think it's also that realignment on the other side as well. We're talking about parties that are going to make up this Progressive Caucus. I think collectively, if I'm not mistaken, they come to about 109 seats. But those 109 seats, or the MK party in itself, I think is going to raise an interesting dynamic in how Parliament is going to start articulating its oversight role, and that's something critical as well. So I think you're going to find this jostling in Parliament become even more embedded at times.
This realignment, and I mean, it's such a big realignment, it's worth saying that again and again, I think. Do you think we could still see more surprises? I mean, to me, it seems unlikely that we'll really know where we are until Cabinet's announced. I know some people suggest maybe someone in the DA will be the Deputy President. That probably seems unlikely to me, but various things are possible at this stage. Are there still some surprises to come just because it's such a fundamental change?
Well, I think you're right, Stephen, in a sense that we have to wait for that, for the constitution of the of the executive. I mean, the naming of the cabinet. I completely agree with you. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. That the DA may want to go into the deputy presidency position. I suspect that after listening to the interview this morning by Helen Ziller, you're getting a slight indication of where things may be in the context of some of the how they may want to position their ministers in cabinet on the issues around accountability, etc., with those ministries. So I think, that will be something to look out for. I think the other one to look out for is for the IFP, PA, and of course the Good Party now that have signed on to the GNU and of course onto the statement of intent. So that will be interesting as well. We do know that the leader of the Patriotic Alliance has been very vocal about a position. It's very interesting that the two positions that are associated with him are Home Affairs and Ministry of Police. I'm not sure whether that's going to happen in the way that we see, but of course, these are some of the dynamics there. And then remember, the president can also appoint two members into his cabinet who are not part of the National Assembly, that are outside from the National Assembly. Will the president take that prerogative and utilize it? And if he does, who would those people be, and which portfolios that would be? I think one of the bigger ones for me is really looking at trade and industry as well. We do know that portfolio, Minister Patel has said he's not returning to that. He's resigning. Minister Tele is no longer a Minister of Police. He's not returning to Parliament. But of course, the other one is foreign policy as well. So there's a number of, I think, clusters in Parliament, in the executive rather, that you have to start looking out for. And those are going to try and end up in the kind of design that you're going to have of cabinet. But that design of cabinet will also have to be looked at in how the design in Parliament happens as well. Because it's not just the GNU at the executive level. What kind of snowballing effect this will have in terms of how the constitution of the committees take place, the chairs of those committees, and of course how they are going to be aligning as well.
Sanusha Naidu, thank you, political analyst at the Institute for Global Dialogue. Really do appreciate the time. So much more to look at, I think, as our politics is realigning itself.